Well, good evening. We will get ready to go ahead and get started. My name is Doug King. I currently serve as the president of the board for Isaac. And so we are honored to have all of you as a part of our community forum on tonight. I'd like to just recognize our sponsors for tonight, or those groups who are a part of this community forum. Hope Through Navigation, the NAACP, Isaac, El Concilio, TRHT, and others that I apologize that I may not know about as also being a sponsor for this forum. I certainly like to welcome you again. We're here to have this community forum, really to kind of talk about the equity regarding the new map drawings for the district maps and et cetera. So that's why we're here. Please forgive me if I mispronounce your name or don't know exactly who you are, but I just want to recognize, I think, the folks that I see, Scott McGraw, Republican chair, I believe, our county clerk, Meredith Place, Thomas Whitner as well, and any other folks that I apologize that may be on here that I cannot see or don't know what your title or position is. Please forgive me, but just those are the folks that I can recognize at this point. Just a few kind of housekeeping things, and then I'm going to offer a word of prayer. We're going to ask you to please remain on mute if you're not speaking. Obviously, of course, we're going to ask you if you would use the raise your hand feature if you'd like to speak, and then you'll be called on in that fashion. And then we're just asking that one person speak at a time. At some point, and Dr. Davis will let us know, they would like to take a photo of the Zoom call and those who are on it. And so, yeah, I see Vice Chair, Tammy Ray, and Vice Mayor Patrice Griffin. Again, welcome. Thank you all for being a part. So I, again, am going to offer a word of prayer. This is typically how we will start our Isaac meetings. Just so you know, my faith tradition is Christian. So I will pray in my faith tradition, but I certainly invite you to pray or meditate or however you pray, to be comfortable to do that in your tradition as well, as I go forth just in my Christian faith. So God, we just thank you for this day that you have given us to come together in the spirit of unity. You ask that things be done decent and in order. And so we ask you to bless us as we go throughout this community forum. Let the love of Christ flow from person to person, from heart to heart. Let us do what is right as opposed to what is popular. Let, as you said in your word, whatever we do to the least ones, that we're actually doing it unto you. So just give us a heart for our community, a heart for our people. Bless us to be unified as we go forth in this endeavor. Just bless us on tonight that we're able to accomplish the things that you desire and the things that we have set forth in this community forum. God, and we thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. So I will yield the floor and give it to who's ever coming next.
I believe that's me, Elder King. Thank you so much for opening for us today. Thank you for your word of prayer. Thank you for the acknowledgement of our sponsorship. We're happy to be on board with this. Thank you to Isaac and the rest of the sponsors here for making this happen. We're super appreciative. I'd like to begin tonight with acknowledging Indigenous Peoples Day, which occurred yesterday. Indigenous Peoples Day is really a time where we honor America's first inhabitants and the tribal nations that continue to thrive today. We acknowledge the significant sacrifices made by Native peoples to this country and recognize there are many ongoing contributions to our nation. With that said, at TRHT, we begin every meeting with a land and people acknowledgement. For that, I will have you read along with me as I share my screen to show our acknowledgement, and you're welcome to read along. I hope folks can see what I'm sharing. Can I get a thumbs up from someone just in case? Awesome, thank you. So today we honor and pay our respects to the land on which we stand and its traditional stewards, the Anishinaabe, the Council of the Three Fires, which include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi, also known as the Ottawa, Chippewa, and Potawatomi tribes. We also acknowledge the people of African descent who were forcibly removed from their land and separated from their families through the enslavement Holocaust, and pay reverence and respect to them for building this country's infrastructure and economy with no compensation or reparations to date. With that said, my colleague Stacy Ledbetter dropped some links in the chat to additional resources about our land acknowledgement and more resources around how you can honor Indigenous folks as well. And to go into our TRHT touchstones, I'm going to pass it to retired Captain Stacy Ledbetter.
Thank you, Francis. And you all, Francis is sharing on the screen our bullet points of our touchstones. So on behalf of Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Kalamazoo, we offer you these group agreements. She's going to drop a link into the chat with the full explanation behind all of them, and I'll just speak these titles into the atmosphere. Be 100% present, extending and presuming welcome. Speak your truth, always by invitation. Please listen deeply. This next one, and we cultivate these group agreements in spaces where people are sharing their personal stories, but with the maintained confidentiality that's not expected here, because this is a public meeting and we are sharing information, or information will be shared, I should say, that will educate the community. So not going by that one, I'll move on to no language of the soul is privileged over any other language of the soul. Value feeling as much as knowing. No fixing, no saving, and no advising. Identify assumptions and suspend judgment. Respect and learn from silence. When things get difficult, turn to wonder. And trust the healing process, your own heart, and the heart of others. Again, full descriptions are provided in the chat for you at a link, and we advise you to hold on to them even beyond this meeting. Thank you.
And then next, we will hear from Toby. Thank you so much, Captain. And Francis.
Good evening, everybody. I want you to know about this wonderful book, Me and White Supremacy, by Layla F. Saad. And I will try and put the link in the chat for you. There's a free online workbook. When Layla Saad began an Instagram challenge called Me and White Supremacy, more than 90,000 people downloaded her workbook. It is a step-by-step reflection process that encourages people with white privilege to examine their racist thoughts and behaviors. And it has chapters with names like You and White Silence, You and Colorblindness, You and White Centering, You and Optical Allyship. 28 short chapters with reflection questions that go with each one. Here's just one example. White exceptionalism. White exceptionalism is the belief that because You have read anti-racism books and articles, gone to social justice-based training, watched documentaries on the effects of racism, and follow some BIPOC activists and teachers. You know it all and do not need to dig deeper. White exceptionalism is particularly rampant in progressive, liberal, spiritual white people, because there is a belief that being these things makes you exempt or above it all. You are not. And the belief that you are makes you dangerous to BIPOC, because you cannot see your own complicity and you will not listen to what is being reflected back to you. If you believe you are exceptional, you will not do the work. If you do not do the work, you will continue to do harm, even if that is not your intention. Please check out Me and White Supremacy free online workbook. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Toby. First, what we're going to do is take the time and take a picture. So anyone that does not want their picture taken, we'll just say turn your cameras off while we go through this process. It's going to take a couple minutes. We have 7 different screens that we're going to go through as far as taking a picture. So let's get picture ready. Smiles. All right, we are all set. So one thing that I want to ask everybody to do is, if you could please take the time. I do see that most people have their name posted in the Zoom, but if you have an organization in which you are affiliated, can you also add that to your screen name for Zoom? And we'll kind of take a couple minutes to do that. Those who already may have their names, and some might not have an organization that you are affiliated with. One of the things that I do want you to do is take the time and put in the chat one word that would describe your feelings as far as how has this process, as far as the appointment commission, how has this process affected you, and how are you feeling in regards to it? Apportionment committee, I am so sorry. So can we get a one word feeling in the chat? Okay, so while people are taking the time to update their names, I'm kind of just gonna go through and read some of what it is that I'm seeing. I see Reagan is frustrated. Nikki is also frustrated. Tammy Ray says she feels silenced. Kelly feels unheard. Wendy Flora feels disappointed. Joan, she's wondering. Pat Davis feels disappointed. Dick feels challenged. Caroline, mystery. Sherry, disappointed. Joe, unheard. Matt, angry. Stephanie, confused. Douglas, overlooked. Wendy feels exhausted. Pat, discouraged. Amy, still confused. Gwendolyn, disillusioned. Patrice, disappointed. Angela, worried. Albert, confused. Toby, embarrassed. John, heartbroken. Rochelle, disillusioned. Tracy, disappointment, saddened for our country. Christopher, disbelief. Michael, disappointed. I can go on and on. Concerned, disappointed, exhausted, invisible, harm. And I'm gonna say, I am very frustrated to add to this. So I just want to thank you all for participating tonight and coming to our forum, as well as putting in the chat. Just, this is a space for us to kind of be able to open up and give our feelings. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sister Kathy. And I want to say good evening. And at this time, we do want to share a video that speaks to racial equity and collaboration. The first is from our Isaac public meeting, and the second is from October 6th, the Apportionment Commission public comments. And we feel that it is important to play these together because it speaks to the type of collaboration that we can have. Collaboration that is inclusive, collaboration that is centered in anti-racism, collaboration with accountability and challenging of systems to impact our local injustices and disparities. Collaboration of elected officials and leaders, and collaboration of community members and leaders. Collaboration that impacts us now and 10 years down the line, and for those who come after us. This collaboration is powerful and it is still possible. We won't watch the whole video in the interest of time, but we will watch half. And I invite all to watch the full video later. Also, the names that you see may not be spelled correctly, and that was beyond our control to edit. So we just wanted to lift that. And I want to extend gratitude to all on this video for sharing their voices that come from their hearts.
This is for county clerk candidates. To deepen your impact of being a public official working with an anti-racist lens, do you commit to attend a public official workshop that focuses on anti-racism, equity, empowerment, and accountability, hosted by Isaac? And as part of the Kalamazoo County Apportionment Commission, do you commit to work to end local gerrymandering? That is, to ensure fair district lines and to work to end systemic voter suppression in Kalamazoo.
Good evening again, Meredith Place, Commissioner, and also candidate for Kalamazoo County Clerk, Register of Deeds. Yes and yes. I am committed to attending an anti-racism workshop and will, if elected, encourage all the staff in Kalamazoo County Clerk and Register of Deeds office, which includes over 10 individuals, to also take anti-racism workshop and become a more culturally competent staff at the county. In addition, I also believe that adequate funding and representation are on the line if we do not have a clerk who is fighting for fair and equitable boundaries as a member of the Apportionment Committee. Thank you again for having me. And again, yes and yes.
County treasurer candidates. To deepen your impact of being a public official working with an anti-racist lens, do you commit to attend a public official workshop that focuses on anti-racism, equity, empowerment, and accountability, hosted by Isaac? And as part of the Kalamazoo County Apportionment Commission, do you commit to work to end local gerrymandering, that is to ensure fair district lines, and to work to end systemic voter suppression in Kalamazoo?
Thomas Whitener for County Treasurer. My answer is yes and yes. Anti-racism training is something that I've dedicated myself to in my own free time and in my work as a realtor. It is something that affects the way that we do our business in real estate every day. And it's something that is very important to me personally with the way that I'm raising my daughter. As far as the gerrymandering and redistricting the lines, I despise gerrymandering. My grandfather was United States House of Representatives and was gerrymandered out of his seat twice. And as someone who has seen the effects of that, I will work to end it in our county. I was happy to support the anti-gerrymandering amendment that we made, that we got through on the ballot in 2018. And I will be excited to work towards ending gerrymandering in our county after 2020. Thank you.
I am Reverend Jocelyn Mason. Law enforcement officials of the judicial system, leaders, and candidates, when your name or the office you are representing is called, please unmute your mic to answer yes to this question. You will have 30 seconds or less to respond specifically to these asks. Prosecutor and Kalamazoo defenders, Do you commit to work with the Anti-Racism Task Force from October 2020 to October 2021 to build a culture of trust and legitimacy between our law enforcement, criminal justice, and our community, as exemplified in Pillar 1 of the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing? This would include collaborating on the following. Share what is already being done in your department, agency around trust, transparency, anti-racism, education, and training. Educational components including the History of Law and Racism workshop and a follow-up debriefing session. Acknowledgement of harm to facilitate healing and trust. Participate in collective visioning and movement sessions with law enforcement, criminal justice, and community neighborhood groups for relationship building through local anti-racism and healing work together. And do you commit to attending a cultural competency workshop focused on working with immigrant community members facilitated by El Concilio? And Kalamazoo Defenders, do you commit to give a workshop presentation about your work for our Indigenous community members? And Prosecutor, as part of the Kalamazoo County Apportionment Commission, do you commit to work to end local gerrymandering, that is, to ensure fair district lines and to work to end systematic voter suppression in Kalamazoo?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Getting. I'm the Kalamazoo County Prosecuting Attorney. First, let me take a second to thank everyone for attending this Isaac's Convention and for your commitment to making Kalamazoo a better place. It's always heartening to see all the good people and all the good work that is being done. Second, absolutely, I commit to all of the asks of Isaac and to working together with all of you and each of our partners in making, in answering each of those asks. Lastly, I'd like to say that I will continue to work to ensure that my office, the Office of the Prosecuting Attorney, and our criminal justice systems, both locally and at the state level, address systemic racism so that we have a system that is fair and just for all. Thank you.
For you all to consider the Pledge of Allegiance that was recited at the top of this meeting, particularly with it ending with "and justice for all." I'm asking that you take to heart the depth and true meaning of the short word all with carrying out your duty.
One district where a person of color is likely to be able to win is not enough. We have 3 people of color on the commission now with 11 districts. People do not want to lose any of that representation after so many decades and generations of underrepresentation.
I just want to note for the record my strong support for, having a conversation with folks that these types of decisions will impact is of paramount importance at this point.
The people of Kalamazoo County, your constituents, we're not asleep. We see what's being done and we need better.
So I think you should also, on October 12th, listen to what people are saying, take a step back and really look into your hearts at what we're saying in this community.
We currently have the most diverse board of commissioners that the county has had. We have 6 women, 3 of whom are people of color, and 1 is an out LGBT representative. Cutting the commission to 9 districts is also going to cut our diversity.
In the current reality with districting and gerrymandering, the candidates choose their voters. To make all voices heard, we need the voters to choose their candidates.
You currently have 3 9-district maps that you're considering. None of these maps are acceptable for our community. You have forced the community to pick a lesser of 3
three evils, which is about math.
Or this afternoon, how exciting it is to see an opportunity for this board to continue its work in collaboration with the community. There's an opportunity for an upcoming collaboration on October the 12th by a number of organizations that are representing Black, Brown, and Indigenous people in our community.
On October 22nd, 2020, Isaac held our virtual public meeting, and we were so excited to have officials, law enforcement, and elected officials agree to Task Force Ask. We have recently shared this video footage with the AC members, where County Clerk Meredith Place, County Treasurer Thomas Whitener, and Prosecutor Jeff Getting agreed to various anti-racism task force asks. Our clerk, treasurer, and prosecutor agreed and affirmed in comments to the following ask. As part of the Kalamazoo County Apportionment Commission, do you commit to work to end local gerrymandering, that is, to ensure fair district lines and to work to end systemic voter suppression in Kalamazoo?
What I really would like to emphasize is this is an opportunity to build trust in communities, and then the value that trust and relationship building has, specifically in areas such as addressing gun violence and reaching people, connecting those people to resources that are needed. So it's about this issue, right? But it is actually a broader context of building trust in our community and having people buy in and believe in their officials.
Kalamazoo is a diverse community that needs diverse representation. Failure to do so will be turning our backs on and silencing many people of color and community members who make up Kalamazoo County.
I would like someone from the Edison neighborhood to represent Edison, so that they can speak to the language that we speak, someone that can understand the difficulties that the community is facing.
The inclusion of a more diverse community. What I really like about living in Kalamazoo, I come from the East Coast, is that it is a diverse community with a lot of participation in the cultural life. And I think this should be reflected in the reapportionment.
There's been almost zero input from anyone in the community who supports moving to 9 districts on these calls. Every effort should be made to assure folks that have been historically underserved that their voices matter.
It seems like the 9 have been chosen, but we really have not had a say. The Black community, as well as white people that live in that community, support the 11 to 13 seats. So I hope that you'll take this into consideration before any vote is done.
Please do not vote today. Please do not take a vote until you actually give the people of Kalamazoo County a legitimate opportunity to participate in the process, instead of to simply make comments that you ignore after you have made all the decisions. Thank you.
To failing schools, to disproportionate outcomes in health, to infant mortality, to job and housing discrimination, racism has remained a presence in American society.
And whereas we as a governmental body have a responsibility to ensure equity for all Kalamazoo County residents, whereas this Board of Commissioners urges other governmental bodies to declare racism as a public health crisis and to immediately take steps to intentionally address and support methods that will strategically reduce the long-term impact of systemic racism.
Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Kalamazoo County Board of Commissioners hereby declares racism as a public health crisis in Kalamazoo County that affects all members of our society on a local, urban and rural, state and national level, and demands action from all levels of government and society.
I would ask the Apportionment Committee
Thank you all for watching. And at this time, we would invite others to go ahead and into this space and go ahead, especially those who have not been able to speak to this issue, to go ahead and utilize the chat. If anything resonated with you, feel free to use the chat and we'll be checking the chat. And right now I am going to pass this over to Gwendolyn. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to be together and have a discussion. I want to thank all of the elected officials that did make time to join us, as well as have a moment to reflect on the families that were just impacted by gun violence. I am located right now in the Vine Neighborhood Association at my office, and there was just 1 block away from us, 2 13-year-olds that were shot. And so we want to lift those 2 families in prayer and remember a lot of the work that we're doing is to really eradicate issues of violence and that we are all working together to eradicate. So I wanted to take a moment to try to in a nutshell, discuss some of the takeaways from the meeting on October the 11th, the special meeting. I first want to say that the way in which that public notice was given out, although definitely within the Public Notice Act, on a Friday, which is when it was released to the public at 3 p.m. on a Friday, for a meeting on Monday at 3 p.m. I'm not going to make a comment on any of the things. I'm just going to basically just state some of the things that happened in a nutshell. There will be an opportunity for folks to, weigh in and have an actual dialogue. Also wanted to note at that meeting, we learned at the meeting that there was an extension that we had requested and that it was granted. That information was given to, I'm assuming, the clerk on Friday, October the 8th at some point in time. And yet there was still a special meeting scheduled to push the resolution of the district map of 9 forward. At the meeting, the special meeting, there were numerous public comments that were heard. Most of which, a lot of the folks are here today. Some are not, but there were numerous calls asking for the Apportionment Committee to suspend, wait, to not vote and to not ratify that map. None of the calls that came in at that special meeting actually supported a 9-district map. And yet, contrary to everything that community said, they still ratified that vote. They still resolved that that was the map that was going to be used and pushed forward. I also want to say that many of the reasons that we have gleaned for this 9 districts that everyone on the Apportionment Committee except Scott McGraw wants is I have heard that the reason is because it's less expensive, which in all actuality it's not less. Well, it's expensive, but it's very, very small, less than $1. That the 9 districts would look better. Looking at the map that I seen, it doesn't really look any better. And that should not be the reason why we're changing the number in the maps. The one thing that, the other thing is that it creates a college district, which, a college district, I guess, is important in a college town. But it also, the one thing that it does do, which is the only thing that we asked for, is that it does create a minority. However, it does a lot more harm and packs the other districts that are not in the majority minority. There was never an opportunity to have a dialogue at this meeting. There was never an opportunity to ask questions and get answers. And so basically what we want to be very clear about is that this was not what any of the people that organized and are sponsoring this event or this forum wanted. This is not what we consider a compromise. We did not, a compromise would entail that both parties are agreeing to giving up some concessions in order to reach an agreement. We have not reached an agreement. We are not okay with the district as the way that it's drawn, and we are appealing that all of the folks that have called in and that are here today have the opportunity to ask questions and to work together to come up with an 11 district map that's fair, that's equitable, and that's just. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gwendolyn. And now we will hear from Nikki.
I'm speaking as a white ally, but reading the definition of inclusion and racial equity from the Race Forward. Thank you for that. Everybody can read along with me. Inclusion is the measure of quality of representation, such as full access, authentic representation, empowered participation, true belonging, and power sharing. Inclusion is a qualitative measure of representation and participation. Racial equity is a process of eliminating racial disparities and improving outcomes for everyone. It is the intentional and continual practice of changing policies, practices, systems, and structures by prioritizing measurable change in the lives of people of color. As a white ally talking to the white allies on this meeting, we should take into consideration at all times what Toby was talking about with me and white supremacy. We might think that we do not have racism anymore in our system because we've taken all of these courses and read these books. But what we have to do is normalize these definitions of inclusion and racial equities into our lives. And we won't always get it right, but we have to keep learning. It's a continuous process. And as a white ally, we need to normalize these definitions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. And next we will hear from our Vice Mayor.
Thank you so much. Thank you all this evening for joining us. I just want to talk a little bit about and create some space for the audience to lift their voices around equity. And so equity is a word that more recently has been discussed a lot, but it also is something that is an action verb, an action word, and something you have to work at and something you have to understand. So what is equity exactly? And so for the purpose of this conversation and moving forward, equity recognizes that each person has different circumstances and allocates exact resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome at its very baseline, ensuring that the outcomes and the conditions and the well-being of everyone, and specifically for groups that have been marginalized, is improved. Equity is what we're talking about in regards to systems. And so as we all know, systems are just made up of people. And while, none of us here, even on this call, are responsible for the creation of these systems, we all have a responsibility and have an opportunity to either uphold or to do something different. And so again, we discuss equity and then more specifically racial equity, I want to allow the space for those to be able to lift up what that means to you all as it relates to this Apportionment Commission and what we have in front of us. So I will invite folks to use the chat, which I see some folks are already doing and speaking into that. And also, if anyone wishes to unmute and speak into the group, please lift your hand.
I'm sorry.
Treasurer
just-
Whitener.
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
No,
Oh, I'm
I
sorry, no,
just
go ahead.
wondered
Lisa.
if Thomas Whitener had his hand up.
And Treasurer, I sent you a message. If you could look at that for us. And on this agenda, we still have a few more things, a few more items, and then we're going to be able to go into maps and be able to have an open discussion and dialogue. And of course, we want to hear from our AC members as well. Thank you. So then, Vice Mayor, if folks want to speak into what equity feels like for you in this process, for me, I would say racial equity means there is no silencing.
Thank you, Dr. Charlay. I see a hand raised here, former Commissioner Stephanie Williams.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to chime in briefly. I did put a lot of comments in the chat, but this is a very unfortunate situation that we are in now. We are, it's not even about political parties for me. It's about fairness, equity, and justice for all of us, giving us access to not only to be able to vote, but to be able to participate in the political process from the beginning to the end, as a candidate, as a voter, as an informed voter, and as people like us who are continually engaging, mobilizing people in our community. For us, it's not just about getting people to vote. It's about getting our community, Black, Brown, Indigenous, people of color, the ability to build power, political power, economic power. And we want to be at the same level, standing and footing as our white counterparts. And this map, this recommendation, particularly coming from our majority party, does not put us there. And they know that it doesn't put us there. And more so, it's really inflicting harm and trauma, because basically, from my view, it looks like they're protecting their privilege, regardless of what it does to disempower people of color in our communities and our families. But as long as they get to keep their seat, it doesn't matter who has access or opportunity. I don't want just Black, Indigenous, and people of color to be able to participate. I want everybody to. We have incredible white allies. We have incredible folks, whether they're LGBTQIA+, or however they identify racial or gender-wise, who are phenomenal allies. All of us who have intention on doing the work, willing to sacrifice, to step up and do that work and bring others along with us, should be able to participate fully in the political process. And this map, this recommendation doesn't get us there. And it's deeply troubling that is coming from the majority of progressives that are making this recommendation without using the filter of equity, social justice, and inclusion, and saying to Black, Indigenous, and people of color voters, we don't care what you think, as long as you step up and vote for us so that we can hold our power and our privilege. So I want to tell them, we've gotten your message really strong, and things are going to change, not just with us rejecting this map, but even through election of this year, going into next year, and everyone forward. We're not putting up with this, and we're not standing for this. And Dr. Davis, thank you, because we will not be silent. Thank you all.
Thank you for your comments, former Commissioner Williams. I see Kathy, and then I see, we'll go from Kathy's comments. And I apologize, I'm flipping through several screens. I did see a few hands raised, and then a few hands were taken back down. So Kathy, use your comments, and then I'll go through some comments in the chat.
Okay, and I probably understand why people raised or put their hand down, because sis just hit everything. And so with that being said, that was one of the things that I just felt like inclusion, that everybody should be included, and our voices wasn't heard. We all should have been a part of this process. This is affecting us over the next 10 years. This is about our community. And if we're not going to be part of it and we can't have a voice in this, who are they actually even representing?
Thank you so much, Kathy. And I'm going to move to just lift up some of the voices in the chat from Carol M.N. Assuring opportunities are available to all across the board. Systems are examined such that anyone applying for a certain job is offered the exact same package with no changes made based on gender, marital status, ethnicity, past history, etc. Truly and justice for all. Angela Anderson, one day of training is never enough. The glimpse of racial equity seemed to have set urgency to cut diversity. The presence of fear has again caused harm with hesitation or reservation. It's not about party lines. It's about the quest and hold of power. And I see the Dixons, you all have your hand up.
Yes. I say amen to Stephanie and Kathy, but I just wanted to add, to me, it means deep listening to all and then taking action and obtaining justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm breezing through to see if I see any other hands raised. All right, and Rochelle has lifted up, as a white person, equity in this process would mean to me that equitable white officials would see that they had a great opportunity to respect and bring BIPOC voices into the process as empowered and valued residents, and not to be defensive and close out. So I just want to allow for just a few more moments of, Adrian.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Patrice. Yeah, I just want to also support Stephanie and Kathy and everybody who has spoken about this. I think as a member of a community that has been at a disadvantage and struggles, to continue to get representation in every political position. I think having less commissioners makes it a little harder for us to compete. When we are putting people or whenever they want to represent us, or that can represent us and listen to us. So it should be the ideal to have more commissioners and not less. The community continue to grow and diversity, and having less commissioners that will represent all of us, it doesn't make any sense. I think I also, I will, continue to support this effort. Everybody that's here, raising my voice now, that it's very it's encouraging, when we talk about democracy, that instead of having people that represent us, that looked at us and, that would act based on our needs, having less representation, less commissioners, it does not make any sense. And that would not be equitable. That would not bring us justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to read one final chat here from one final comment here in the chat before we transition over to Matt Smith. This is from Reverend Doreen Gardner. This is a power move by the privileged to maintain and increase their power while attempting to silence and marginalize communities in this county. We will not be sidelined nor silenced. Thank you all, and I will pass it on to Matt Smith.
This is Matt Smith. A lot of hard but powerful truths being shared, and I appreciate being with everybody. We're going to talk about, we're going to keep talking about racial equity directly, and we're going to wrap it into the maps, the idea of map making. And if I share a map, I want to say right up front that there is something inherently problematic about white people drawing maps, including myself. It's not that there's something wrong with me, it's that I have no lived experience and I never will. So that's just a racial fact of America. So me, who benefited from tons of privilege, it doesn't really matter what map I produce, it's not gonna harm me. It's not gonna take away my paycheck or my home ownership status or my retirement. So when all white people are drawing maps, what has to be done is the inclusion has to go on overdrive. You have to overcompensate for your whiteness. And other communities do that. There's much more inclusive processes that are actually baked in the process. The people facilitating can stop me at any time, tell me to shut up or skip ahead. So feel free to just jump in. Racial equity, and a lot has been lifted up on it. It is tied to racially oppressed people. It's tied to oppressed groups, which is also tied to a history of oppression, right? And that history of oppression has produced what we call racial disparities, differences in life metrics. So racial equity is baked in with those three things: history. Racial equity is also different than everyone gets the same, right? That's what equality is. We're in the era of equity, I hope, not equality. Everyone gets the same isn't going to end racial disparities. So let's talk about maps. I want to share my screen to share some very basic demographic racial facts about where we live in the county. Let's see if I can figure it out. Where do Black and brown folks live, right? Let's start there. Y'all can see that? This is our county, and this is where Black African-American people live. This is Black people, so make up about 12% of our county, right? And this would be all of the areas of our county that have over 12% Black folks. So these are the voting ages, because we're drawing maps of voting maps, right? So obviously you can see something. Black folks are in the city disproportionately. I don't mean to say Black people don't live in Portage. Of course they do, but disproportionately, this is what we're looking at. Ashimo has gotten more diverse in the last decade. Most of the racial equity, most of the diversity, and by diversity I mean non-white, more mixed areas instead of overwhelmingly white segregated areas, is in the city. We have 22 neighborhoods. Almost all of our 22 neighborhoods do have over 12% Black folks in them. So what would be a logical interpretation that when you talk about racial equity and map drawing, you focus on the city, you center the city? And I'm not saying that to crap on the surrounding areas, but that's what you do. And then, and almost all the people who called in said this, you center what the city calls shared prosperity neighborhoods. These were the neighborhoods that were redlined 80 years ago, right? The north side, 79%. The east side, 59%. Predominantly African-American, low income, amazing neighborhoods. Edison, I want to lift up Edison. We have African-Americans. We have a significant Latinx population in our Edison neighborhood. Over half of the city's Latinx residents live in that one neighborhood. So you're talking about racial coalition, Black Latinx, you're talking about amazing language diversity. So you're talking about lifting up those three neighborhoods, right? North side, east side, Edison. And this is just a flipping of the map. This is where white folks live. Voting age white folks. So when I think of racial equity, I think of the city. I think of our three neighborhoods, north side, east side, Edison, and that was overwhelmingly poured out in the public comment. Before we talk about what racial equity in the process and the product is for like map drawing, what does racially inequitable map drawing look like? And this was already lifted up. I don't really have to say much about it, but the silencing of Black women, not listening to Black women, ignoring or acting paternalistic about the voices of Black women. That is the most classic form of American racism that there is in our 402-year history. That's just a description of what happened. And anyone who looked at how the process went, that has a basic analysis of racial equity and inclusion, it was that happened, and it was deeply harmful. And here we are. So I was going to move on to the map that was actually voted on recently, even though so many people just said, you don't have to do it. You have the extension granted. You can, at the final hour, you can include folks. But that didn't happen. But I was going to look at the Phelps map that was actually voted on and just do a little basic analysis. Does that sound good from the facilitators and the, if I can figure this out. Another point about racial equity map drawing is you could tell that it seemed to me that the racial equity starts inward and then goes outward, right? North side, east side, Edison, city, and goes outward. That seems to be what the thinking would be. I thought most of the evidence from the AC, the apportionment committee, I actually think they started from the outside in, to be honest, from some of the things that they were saying about the outlying districts and making them whole. And like Gwendolyn Hooker brought up, having nice shapes. So inside out, not outside in. All right. Phelps's map was a 9-district map, and everyone already lifted this up. Already, it's a non-starter. It's a non-starter. 9-district. Nobody wanted a 9-district, and that's another description of what actually happened. So we have to start with that problem. When you have so few districts, you're going to put all the Black and brown people in one district. Not all of them actually did that. They tried to split, but that's what happened. So when you're looking at the red area on Phelps's map, which is actually quite large because it's only 9 districts, it has to be really big because all of the districts have to be roughly the same amount of people. So that's why it is so big. It is the only majority minority district in the map, but like people have lifted up. And what I think is a very reasonable assumption is like, you'll get one Black or brown person, good luck on the other ones. Like, what is the evidence that you have to produce this evidence, by the way, the white folks that were creating the maps, what is the evidence we're going to get more diversity? The people that called in do not believe that we'll get more diversity with this map. That was overwhelmingly clear. So 9 districts, you get the 1 Black and brown district, which includes the north side, the east side, and Edison, and other parts of neighborhoods also. Another thing I mentioned, Oshtemo getting more diverse in the last decade. So what this does is it takes Oshtemo and adds it to, I guess, Alamo, which is significantly more white. So that's something I wanted to point out about this Phelps 9-district map. And then finally, I want to lift up Edison again. Black and Latinx neighborhood, low income, similar political interests as East Side, North Side. Edison, where are we at? Actually, I want to point out Millwood, sorry. So Millwood is a neighborhood of the city, obviously. It is a white neighborhood, but it is significantly less white and more diverse than Portage. And someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have a commissioner of color that's right here, that's now competing with a significantly whiter Portage, right? Racial equity. So that's something I wanted to point out. And actually, sorry, I believe half of Edison is also, so you got half of Edison, this amazing minority coalition district, half of Edison, all of Millwood, and in a big chunk of white Portage. Statistically, of course, I'm talking.
He don't have one this weekend.
Any facilitator or sponsor or Commissioner Burns that wants to add about a racial analysis of this Phelps map besides what I just said? Let's go to the score. So what Mariah Phelps would say is it has a really good minority representation score. Well, it only has 9 districts, and it has 1 district that has statistically all the Black and brown people in. So let me show you what that looks like. So 80, right? Let me go down. Minority representation, well, it's good, right? But the community knows that the trick of the mathematics does not guarantee more Black and brown folks. You know what I mean? So I want to point that out about the map. Like, if you have to draw a 9 district map, which clearly that's what they decided, this is probably the map you'd produce if you did want the highest minority score. But again, the community absolutely was not calling for it. Stephanie, do you have your hand up?
I just wanted to say briefly, Matt, that I think it's really important the way that you laid this out, especially when you compare it to last year's election results. If anybody paid attention to the outcomes of it, you had white voters in predominantly white or upper middle class districts voted straight white all the way down the ticket. And even when we had more people of color participation. That being said, once you change where you made the example of where we have a minority candidate that now is going to stretch from the Edison Millwood neighborhood all the way into Portage, where there's less diversity, you're giving that person less of an opportunity to be elected, because we already know that most white voters, regardless of their political background or not, are going to primarily vote white. We saw that from in all the way down, all the way across the ticket, from the statewide level to the local. Now, we don't think that everybody is intended or intentional about anti-racism activities or training or using those tools. But what we do know, when that racism exists, especially at the level that it does here in Kalamazoo, we don't want to exasperate it by changing the scenarios that lessens or weakens a person's ability to run, to vote, to be elected, or to have election outcomes that would be more beneficial for them. And this recommendation, not yours, Matt, but the original one does. So I just want to point out that we already know the voting trends. We know the lack of anti-racism thoughts behind those trends. And this new proposal doesn't help get us anywhere with getting that access and opportunity. And even not just with voters. We saw it with the organizations, with the political party not supporting people of color, with the unions, when we had union families, union folks that came from families, never got an endorsement, a volunteer, a phone call or anything. And we know that it's the lack of anti-racism that fueled a lot of those decisions and those supports, that's where the outcry from our community is coming from. We see it, we know it, we lived it. We have that lived experience, and we don't trust that this can get us into a better space. This actually takes us back even further than 10 years. It takes us back generations and prevents us, like I said earlier, from building on that political power that we deserve.
Thanks so much for lifting that up. And again, lifting up, we're not here to talk Democrat, Republican. We're not. We're talking about racial equity and real inclusion. I wanted to lift up real quick. I was reading this morning in 1968 Kalamazoo history, when they decided to go to a 17 district map. And you might want to say this is all coincidental. This is the height of the civil rights era, and that they did that 17 district map, and a Black man from the north side named Reverend B. Moses James got elected soon after, because the north side had its own district. I want to throw this up. How are we on time, the facilitators? You can tell me to shut up whenever. I want to throw this up as not just a map, but a teaching moment. This is a map. It's 13 districts. It says unequal population. I was going to call it illegal, but I want to come back to that. I want to come back to how white people use language. It's an unequal population map. It's basically focusing and centering and lifting up the North Side, East Side, and Edison as neighborhoods, as powerful neighborhoods that deserve as much representation as possible, in my opinion. So it's North Side, East Side, Edison, right? 3 majority minority neighborhoods. They're unequal. They're very small, right, compared to the county. So people that are on the call, there's a rule that they have to be the same. So that's why it's called unequal. And then it's lifting up the city. As you can tell, there's what, 3, 4, 5, 6 districts. That would leave 7 for the rest of the surrounding areas. Not much to say about the surrounding areas. I probably just copied one of the AC's maps on that. I'm not from Kalamazoo. Okay, this is where us white folks say it's illegal. It's illegal. And I want to point out the irony of saying that. This idea of equal, that the districts have to be equal, that was given to us from Black Americans. That came from the civil rights movement. And why did it? So I came across the SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, part of the civil rights movement. They were fighting for this idea of one man, one person, one vote. Why do you think they were fighting for that? It's because their neighborhoods were getting the shaft. Their neighborhoods were getting underrepresented. They call it malapportionment. Their neighborhoods were getting harmed. For how long? I want us to take 1 second to imagine how long that happened. So now you have white folks. This equal population rule came from the civil rights movement. Now we have white folks who are drawing these maps saying, we can't create more racial equity, more representation in historically harmed neighborhoods because of the rule that Black Americans fought for, right? How twisted is that situation? So anyway, I wanted to point out that rule. This is an unequal population map. All the other areas, by the way, are equal population. I want to point that out. So then this is where you start with racial equity. I believe this is roughly where you start. And then you think about it. Can we do it? What would happen? Who would sue us? What would a judge do? Is this immovable? Is there bending? Is there breaking? Is there creativity? Okay, we can't do it, right? Okay, how are we as powerful white allies going to change the system then, right? The system that our fathers, to make a more racially equitable process and mapping system. So then you go into the possibility. So okay, we can't have maximum racial equity. How can we approximate it the best that we can? I'm just telling you how, when you start with racial equity, when it's the very starting point, it's baked in the dish, then you go from there with a lot of inclusion. So this is a legal map. So let's go. Does the facilitators want to go to a 14 district map that tries to center the North Side and the East Side, and then tries to center the Edison neighborhood? Or do you think that we should move on and then that would be more of a community map building process? You know what I mean?
Yes, thanks, Matt. If you could just mention it, and then we can go ahead and let Councilmember Burns weigh in, and then the both of you can take a couple of questions before we move on. Thank you so much. Powerful. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm just going to mention it, and I'm actually going to put it in the chat. But it's trying to follow all the rules, right? All the rules. There's like one main rule: equal population. It's trying to center the North Side, East Side, Edison. Where'd I go? Okay, sorry, it's 14. Let me go ahead and get the link real quick. Where's the chat? All right. Here it is. I'm just throwing it into the universe. So just show it real quick. North side, east side, Edison. The top one is a majority minority district. The bottom one is like a percentage away from. So I just want to throw that. It's in the chat. And Commissioner Burns. And I think while Commissioner Burns is joining us, I'm actually going to go back to this Phelps map, which was the map that they voted on recently, just to be clear. And I think Commissioner Burns had comments about it.
I do, yeah, thanks, Matt. And I'm going to drop into the chat an image thing I had to add. Matt did a job of laying out some of the same considerations that I had. The only thing I'm going to add to the discussion, if you look in the chat, you can get to an image that also overlays the places where current elected officials live. So you can consider for yourselves whether that may have been a motivating factor when these maps were drawn. But I'm proud of the diversity on our county commission. On an 11-person commission, we've got 6 women and 3 women of color. The new maps will take two female commissioners and draw them into one district together. That's Commissioner McKissick and Stubbs. And so there will only be 1 seat available for the 2 of them. That's the sort of northwest portion of the Kalamazoo and Kalamazoo Township. And on the east or on the west side of Portage, Commissioners Bruder, Melgar, and Quinn will be drawn into the district together. So there's a potential that we'll lose a 2nd female commissioner there. But what I really wanted to focus on, because there was some discussion at the commission, Portage should be happy because Portage is largely kept into 2 districts. I'm not happy with this map. If I were on the commission, I would not have voted for these. And it's specifically due to the what's new District 5, which includes where current Commissioner Morales lives. And Matt alluded to this, but so that is the blue district there that includes Portage and portions of Millwood and Edison. And if you look at the 3 voting precincts that are up in the city of Kalamazoo there, Matt mentioned this, but here's the data, is those are 60% white and 3% white in terms of population. If you go down into the districts that are in Portage, those voting districts are 82% white and 15% non-white. So the practical impact of that is that if a candidate who doesn't live in the city of Portage would like to run, they have to convince the vast bulk, which makes up 60%, 70% of the overall district of people who live in Portage, that they're going to serve their interests well. And to me, that's the main reason why the goals of racial equity. The other thing I'll just note when you look at the new district maps is that there isn't a current commissioner who lives in the southwest, the new District 8 portion of the map. So who's likely to gain power is potentially, someone who lives over in Texas Township, maybe a person of significant means, so who's losing representation and power and who's gaining it in this district, in this new proposed map, seems pretty clear. And so it didn't have to be this way. It seems pretty clear to me that an 11 district map would have been better served the goals of the community and would have better incorporated people's feedback. So I'm hoping that with the delay, that the proposed maps that have already been voted on won't be ratified, and that we'll take another look and try to come up with something that better serves the community's needs. And as a member in Portage, despite the discussion, I'm not happy with the way these maps have turned out. Thanks.
Thank you, Council Member Burns. Are there any questions? We'll probably take one or two questions for Council Member Burns or Matt Smith. We'll take one or two. All right.
Dr. Slay, I don't have a question. I just have to say that listening to this instructions and looking at the maps and the charts have really unconfused me. Now I know what I'm looking at. I know what it's about. The other maps that were shown, that was too confusing. We couldn't find anything. But these maps, I appreciate this very highly that we got to see it. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Al. Thank you so very much. Deacon Karen, I see you leaning forward. Were you unmuting? You're muted.
I really like the 13 member, you know, when we were talking, I thought, boy, we really need to go to 13. And then when I saw the map, I thought, oh, yes.
Thank you, Deacon Karen. Thank you. Do we have one more question for Council Member Burns or Matt Smith? And I can't see everybody because I'm screen sharing you all, just so you know. All right. Okay. So if not, we will go ahead right now and we will, thank you both so very much. Pass this on to Miss Wendy.
Dr. Charlay, there was a question in the chat. I don't know if it was directed at anyone.
Okay, can you help me out? I can't view the chat without messing up the screen here.
Sure, the question is, can you comment on why a student district was cited as a priority in the proposed solution?
So we're looking for right now questions for Councilmember Burns and Matt Smith. Is that a question towards, okay, I see the question now, thank you. Matt or Councilmember Burns, I can see the chat now. Thank you so much, Francis, thank you, thank you. Rochelle had a question. So
yeah. Yeah, it just was, thank you, Dr. Charlotte. It just was very odd in reading and hearing the presentation of the solution that was adopted that suddenly a student district was cited as a significant achievement in this solution. And that just seemed very odd in relation to the equity issues that had been presented. And I wondered if anyone was able to comment or lend any insight on that. But I suppose what Commissioner Burns is saying is right, that would be a question for the commission members. It was a mystery to me.
Yeah, Rochelle, I think, you know, white people, we come in with all of our identities, and a lot of times we're blind to other people's identities. And to me, it was a clear case of Maria Phelps was a student for a long time. She said that. So she lifted up that identity over other identities is how I interpret that.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Rochelle. Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Councilmember Burns. Right now, we will go ahead and hand this over to Miss Wendy Fields.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. And to Kathy, I just want you to know I was not being hard-headed. I just did not know how to put my organization in there. So I am president of the Metropolitan Kalamazoo branch of the NAACP. I am going to work on that, so I have it right for Kathy next time. So my job here tonight is just present to you our ask. And we see this as a wonderful opportunity for the AC, the Apportionment Commission, to step up as leaders. And to be a leader, it means you have thick skin. It means you listen. It means you acknowledge that you don't have all the answers. It means that being new to this role and what you're doing, you don't know everything, because if you did, you would not have already made so many changes to the maps. It means that you have to step back, take a deep breath, and listen to all the ones that are giving you information, input that you have just chosen to turn your back on, not acknowledge, not take into account at all. And I think it's already been said that there is power in the vote. So you need to think about that. We have to think about that. Our votes cannot be taken for granted. I think that you guys are doing a lot of hard work, but I don't think that you're doing it with a heart. I think that it could be done better. I think if you step back and look, it will be done better. So one of the things that we want to do is ask you to pump the brakes. Pump the brakes, look at how this community could help do the work with you, not after you, not in front of you, but beside you as partners, because we can do that and you can make it happen. It is about power, I believe. I've said all along, I thought that there was an ulterior motive. We can do better. We must do better. Stephanie has already said that where we've come to this point has been generational. If we continue on the path that you have chosen for us, these next 10 years could make it and impact us for generations to come. So all we're asking you to do right now is take advantage of the extension, the deadline extension that has been offered. There is no need for you all to rush through this. So please, that's our ask of you. Simply pump the brake, take advantage of this time and this extension, because we know that we can do better. We will do better. We have to do better because our kids and our lives depend on it. And even though you may not acknowledge it and be able to see it for yourselves right now, your kids, your lives, your generations to come depends on what we're doing here in Kalamazoo. And I think that there's been a lot of information that has been given historically, currently, even as we see things and times to come in the past, I mean, in the future. So think about that. So that is our ask. Just simply, please take advantage of this opportunity to extend the deadline so that we have time to collaborate and work together. And we are willing to do that. We really are. The other ask that we have is of our community. And community, we simply want to ask you to write those letters to the AC. Take a stand. We are so happy to see all of you on here tonight. And I know, looking at some of the faces, they've not been able to hear from you, but you being here tonight speaks volumes. They need to know that it's more than just a handful of us that have been calling in, writing these letters. You can do your part. If you believe in this work, if you believe in equity, if you believe that we have to do better by our children and by ourselves here in Kalamazoo, please take a stance, and we ask that you will do that, and we know that you can. We are here and available. If there's any other questions that you have, you know who we are. So we just want this thing to happen. And what we will do is continue to put the information out via Facebook, via, I don't do Snapchat and all that other stuff. Those of you that do it though, you young folks, y'all are on it. But we are here to get the word out, to get the message out, to work in a collaborative manner. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Miss Wendy. And thank you, Sister Kathy, for putting the letter link in the chat. Feel free to click on that link, and that will direct you to be able to let your voices be heard. And that message, once you submit it, will go directly to all 5 of the Apportionment Commission members. So thank you. Right now, I'm going to turn this over to Brother Ed.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ed Genesis. I am a part of the Isaac Anti-Gun Violence Task Force team. And tonight we are going into the facilitating part of questions and answers. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will go at them.
And then I see a question, Brother Ed, from Commissioner Jen Strebs in the chat.
Yeah. Yes, I just saw it. Thank you, sis. Dr. Charlotte. Who is my sister in the struggle. So thank you. From Commissioner Jen Strebs, we have, will AC members commit to seek advice from council on a motion to reconsider at their upcoming meeting?
As the only member of the AC that could make it for the full 2 hours, I have no problem with asking council about it. But I would like to, if I can, provide some clarity on why that may not be as effective as it seems like it would be. The primary reason being that after our meeting on October 6th, when council advised us that we needed to submit a map that meeting in order to have it not fall within the complex arcane window created by the Census Bureau's releasing data at different times, and the uncertainty with the letter of the law, our maps were submitted by the map that we voted on was submitted by the letter of the law. The special meeting that was called and happened on the 11th was to sign a piece of paper that the state had asked for in addition to our submission. We received an opinion from council that the original submission was legal and done properly. And then after we had already posted for the special meeting, later in that day, late in the afternoon, we found out that the extension had been granted. So the maps have already been submitted. Now I'm perfectly happy to talk to council at our next meeting. Actually, I will talk to council tomorrow and get an opinion on the motion to reconsider. Sorry, y'all, it's been a long day. But I'm happy to talk to council about that and see what the options are with the map already being submitted. Because we do have that extension. We have until November 15th. This process is, I use the word arcane, and I think that that's a good description. The laws were written and then amended in part, and other pieces still have legacy wording that is still technically law, but confuses the situation. So I'm not sure, because I'm not a lawyer, exactly what the options are. But I will talk to council about that, and I'll do it tomorrow.
Thank you very much. We have another question from Albert Dixon, which is there a way of putting surveillance cameras in certain streets or locations?
I don't know if I'm the one to speak to that.
I guess asking Albert Dixon if you can elaborate a little more on a little clarity behind that.
Well, the reason I asked that question, because I thought, Ed, that there was going to be something about gun violence. So that's why I asked that question. What I meant was, since we're having problems identifying certain things happening, I was wondering if it were possible to put some type of surveillance cameras in certain locations, in certain areas. Maybe it could help the police see the perpetrators. That's what I was talking about.
Okay, well, thank you. That up taken care of for that. And I will go to the next. Ms. Dixon, I will hit you on a personal chat and leave my email. Peterson asks, is the map that was submitted set in stone now?
I don't know. And that's one of the things that I'll ask council tomorrow, as far as how the submission process works. And I wish Clerk Place had been able to stay with us. She may have had more information on that, since it is the clerk who submits the maps. I would have gone with her, but I would have gone to her on that one. But unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that one. But I will go to council and will inform the leadership of this group or these groups with that answer once I get it. Thank you.
Thank you. That pretty much answers the next question from Joe Brown, which was, isn't there an appeal process for us to submit another map from the community? And so we'll be waiting till you do your process. Going over to Bill Reeves. Thomas, can you explain why such little community input before the process and shutting down input since then?
So we received a lot of community input as far as the number of districts that people wanted, as far as what areas they wanted included in the maps, the focus, the priorities, that kind of things. Shutting down community input, I don't really know what you're talking about there, except for maybe changing the times of the meetings, which was done entirely because we expected the meetings to run long, and so move them earlier in the day so that we weren't at the end of a full work day trying to work until midnight, 1 o'clock, which the commissioners on this call, I'm sure, can speak to why that is no fun and probably does not produce the greatest work in the world when you're tired and trying to push through a meeting. So that was the reason we moved the meetings to 1 o'clock. And then based on community input that wasn't tenable for public comment, we pushed them to 3 as a compromise so that we could still get the work done, get the comment that was requested, and have the participation that was requested, but still be finished at a reasonable time of the evening. My email has been filling up since this process started. I've read every email that's been sent to me. I haven't responded to them all, but I don't have time to respond to every email I get as a treasurer. So it's been a difficult balancing act for responding to community input. But trust me, that I have heard every comment that's been read. The recorded line comments that we had last time, or on the 6th, I heard all of those 3 or 4 times because I was the one who downloaded them and listened to them and got the names. And if I misspelled your name, I really do apologize. It was trying to hear it said and then typing out what I heard. So apologies for that. My computer speakers aren't that great. So we have heard you. But I would like to have the opportunity this evening to speak to the reasons that we made the decisions we did, or have made the decisions we have so far, and at least to speak to that from my point of view. I don't think I can talk to the content of the minds of the other members of the Apportionment Commission.
Treasurer, can I lean in just for a second? And we are going to allow you that opportunity because we do want to offer you space to be able to speak into this Zoom as well. I just want to make sure, I'm going to hand this back over to Brother Ed, just to make sure that people, because we're here and I'm so happy that you're here and you were able to stay as long as you could. I just want to make sure others get their questions out, and then we'll pass that over to you to be able to have words as an AC member.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Brother Ed.
Yes, thank you for that, Dr. Charlay. So we have we have quite a few. one of them is from Portage City Council member, Mr. Chris Burns, who asks, did you receive any community feedback in favor of reducing to 9 districts? And he went on to say, I'm not sure that I heard anything during public comment time. Another one right after that was from Commissioner Jen Strebs, who said, will Treasurer commit to being honest with the community that council told you twice on the 6th you did not have to vote?
I think, okay, I'll respond to both of those in reverse order. Commissioner Strebs must be misremembering because the council said that the safest option for us to proceed was to vote on a map that evening and apply for the extension. And so we did so. That's my recollection of it. And that was what we decided to go with. There was an option, I think, to have another meeting before the deadline, which was on a Monday. And I wasn't 100% sure that we could have that meeting on Monday and then submit the map on the same time because our meetings were later in the afternoon. So that was my understanding there, that the safest way to get it done and make sure that the maps were submitted in time to meet the deadlines, again, the complicated deadlines created by the 2020 census delays, was to submit those maps that day or vote on those maps that day. And that council, that's what they advised us. The other question, I'm sorry, what was the other question was about receiving community input on 9 districts. And yes, we did talk to people, or I did at least, who supported 9 districts as a way to equitably divide the county. And, you know, I'll talk to that when I make.
Thank you.
But they did not speak at public comment. That was, they did not call in or leave a message.
Okay, thank you very much. And Kathy, I see your hand up. Yes, if you come off mute and ask your question. You're on mute.
Okay, I put in the chat because I wanted to ask you directly, Treasurer Whitener, whether or not your council told you about the extension prior to y'all.
About the extension after we set the special meeting for Monday. The resolution, again, was an additional piece of paper that was asked for by the state.
Yes.
Was not required for the submission of maps. So if you read the statute says that what you have to submit is a map and legal description of that map, and that's it.
Okay.
And so that was submitted on October 7th in the morning after our October 6th meeting. And then the state came back to us and asked for an additional piece of confirmation, but the map had already been submitted. So we set the special meeting. And then later in that day, the appeals court came back and said that, yes, like 24 counties got the extension. So that
was 15. It was 15. So I just want to put clarity in here while we're here, because during that map was ratified on the 6th. and the special meeting was held and put public at 3:30 Friday. That other meeting was held at 3 p.m. Prior to that letter or the resolution, and Prosecutor Gettings went in and gave full explanation on why it had to have the resolution, because clerk thought that she would be able to send the map with the minutes, but they said that wasn't enough. So I've been at every meeting, I've listened, everything. So the attorney did tell you that you were able to pull that map. You had until November 15th to supply a map. I just want to make sure we are very transparent here, and everyone here on this forum and in this call is aware of what was said to you, because right now I feel like you're running around words. So you had the opportunity, the AC, and I'm not saying you as an individual, the AC had the ability to pull that map, work with the community. It was not legal to say that that resolution had to be put in. So now our question is, since the input did not come from the community, we want to know whether or not that map still can be pulled, and is AC willing to work with us as a community to get a map represent us for the next 10 years. That's less than 9 districts. And that's the question you need to take back to the AC.
I've already said that I will go to council and I will take that to the AC.
Okay, well, thank you. I just want to make sure we are clear, because that you had no choice but to send that resolution in on Monday. And that's not true. AC had the option to pull that map. And that's the transparency I want everyone on this call to understand.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Kathy. Thank you very much, Thomas Whitener, for staying on. Before I call on Commissioner Jack Urban, I see your hand raised as well. Just to echo what Kathy said, I want to read a comment, which is by our sister Stephanie Williams, who said, "Hold up, they just booked out this meeting, taking no questions, giving no response, written or otherwise, and not saying nothing. That feels like major disrespect and affirms if they've taken the care and concern of their constituents into consideration while doing this important work." That says a lot. Commissioner Jack Urban, you have your hand.
Given that apparently we do have an opportunity to reconsider that map that was submitted, does the Apportionment Committee follow parliamentary rules? And if so, what is the procedure for actually introducing a motion to reconsider? Does that have to come from a person who voted for that map, or can it come from anyone? And who's gonna lead that process if it seems to me it's being steered by whoever the chair is?
So we do follow parliamentary process, Robert's Rules of Order specifically. I am not a super expert on Robert's Rules. In every meeting, I have my cheat sheet sitting next to me, and I don't have it with me at the moment. A motion to reconsider, I know, I believe has to be introduced. I don't think it can be introduced by the chair, so I don't think I can introduce it. But I believe it can be introduced, and it brings a question that was previously considered back before the board. So I believe that would be an option.
Okay, I have a follow-up question then.
Go for it.
It seems to me that it would be very nice if we could obtain from the Apportionment Committee some commitment from a member of it that they're going to at least offer that motion to reconsider. Otherwise, it's going to look like it's rammed through. We have a chance to be very clear about what we want as public, as the public here, and I sure don't want this meeting to go to waste discussing justifications for why you did what you've already done. What you've already done is not acceptable. And we want to be sure that it doesn't continue, the process of your work doesn't continue in the path it has begun on. It's like you're meeting in a sealed vacuum container as far as public input is concerned. That's how it looks to us. Maybe you feel inundated by emails, but I don't see a response coming from anybody who makes it sound like you're open to a consideration of anything but what has already been proposed, which basically is taking us in the wrong direction, if I may say so. A larger number of county commissioners right away does not prevent anybody who's currently an incumbent from losing a seat. So right away, you're increasing representation just by numbers alone. And I can easily see dividing it up in such a way that the minority district is more competitive, and other surrounding districts are more representative of the metropolitan community, not townships. Yeah, that's an artificial distinction. Townships, it's just something on a map. Why do the boundaries have to be so closely aligned with townships? That's a big question I want to have someone answer. I'm sorry I got off the topic a little bit, but I wanted to get my oar in while I could.
Well, I can answer that if that's okay.
All right.
Yes, please.
So the criteria for drawing these maps is set out, and while you can bend some of those rules, the attempt or the focus on maintaining the integrity of the metro boundaries, of the township boundaries that are drawn is put very high in that hierarchy of rules. And so that is something that in drawing these maps, we are obliged to attempt to achieve. The rules of reapportionment, the rules that we are as an AC committee required to follow as these maps are drawn, are racist. They are not necessarily racist in the text of them, but they are racist in the way that they interact with the historic racism of redlining, which, thank you, Matt Smith. I'm calling back to your presentation here, which I learned a lot from. So thank you for putting that together and giving it. But you know, they are racist because they call back to those rules, or they call back to that and interact with those historical inequities that have been enforced upon communities of color, minority communities, non-white communities, because the definition of whiteness has changed over the course of the history of the United States and over the course of the history of the world. So we are required to operate within the rules of the apportionment process. And equity is something that we have to attempt to layer on top of that process. And it's difficult and it's complex. Somebody asked who would be the one to challenge these maps if we just ignored the population requirements. Well, the ones that would be up to challenge those would be the ones that would be losing out. They would be the white people in the other districts that are being disenfranchised because their voices matter less. And in the courts, the appeals courts, we would lose that fight and those maps would be immediately thrown out. I'm trying to be very careful with my words because I want to be intentional here about what I'm saying. Being equitable in the process in my opinion, doesn't matter if you don't get across the finish line. If you don't have a map that's equitable at the end of the day, or you don't have a map that's accepted at all at the end of the day, then how well you did in the lead up to that doesn't matter, because the voting districts are what they are. So, okay, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no. Thank you, Treasurer. I want to get ready to hand this over back to Brother Ed just to see if there's one more question. I do want to say, and this is the powerful thing about collaboration, we can have a map centered in racial equity and anti-racism, and we can get it across that finish line together. I truly, truly, truly believe that. Community and elected officials together, we can do that. It doesn't have to be one or the other. We can do this. Brother Ed, is there one more question? And then we will open this up. Treasurer, we want to hear from you. Want to give you that time, of course.
Yes, thank you, sis, for that. I have to call on Sister Gert. She's been very patient, and thank you for your patience. Before I do, I just want to say, when I hear things like legal requirements and things like that, when it's pertaining to community not feeling it, I just want to lift up that redlining also was able to be done, and a lot of things after the Reconstruction period under the guise of being legal and requirements. So I just want to lift that up, and so we don't repeat history. Sister Gert, please, and thank you for your patience.
Yes, I have a little bit of a political experience, and we can call the state legislator down to convene, to have their meeting in Kalamazoo at any public facility that we have here. We don't have to sit back and take something that's just thrown at us. We done got punched in the eye, 2 black eyes, our teeth knocked out, bloody noses, and we don't have to take it. We have brothers and sisters on the state level that can come down and fix this mess. All we have to do, and we can get together. I only have Wendy's number. We can get together and figure out how to get them down here and convene their meeting in Kalamazoo. This is crazy.
Thank you very much for that.
1960s.
That's right. Thank you very much for that. And I will turn it back over to you, Dr. Charlay, and thank you all for your questions, and apologies to anybody that we did not get to.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, Brother Ed and all. And so we want to take some time to offer space for our treasurer to be able to speak. And then after that, we want to allow folks time to put words into the chat of what they're feeling right now. And then we'll get ready to close. And so Treasurer Whitener, we invite you to be able to speak right now. And thank you. And thank you again for staying to the end. We're going over just a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. And sorry for pushing this over, but thank you everyone for staying to participate. So there's a couple of things that I want to center that informed my decision to push toward 9 districts. And again, I'm tired, so I'm going to speak slow and careful and try to be intentional with what I'm saying. The priorities that I had, and I hear what y'all are saying about, redlining was legal and all of that. But this process is happening whether we, go through the legal avenues or not. The maps will be withdrawn, so or will be redrawn. So we have to do it, and we have to do it in a way that we think is best. So creating maps that will withstand challenge and will hold up is one of the priorities that we have to have. The other priority that I had in mind when looking at the numbers was equity and minority representation, because I think that that is very important. And lifting those voices is the reason that I filed to run for this office on the day before filing deadlines closed, because I spent the time before that with the chair of our party trying to find a candidate of color to run for this office. And nobody wanted to run for it against Mary Balkema, which I can understand. She was a terrifying opponent. The other reason that I pushed for 9 districts was effective governance. I know how difficult it is to take a large group of people and to reach consensus, with different opinions and different viewpoints, and to shepherd a meeting or a group activity. And so working toward that, a smaller group is going to be more efficient and more capable, in my opinion. When we got the numbers for the apportionment of the districts from the census and looking at them, what we saw is that we had a reduction in the population of Kalamazoo City. The population numbers went down, while the population numbers increased in the county overall, and primarily in areas such as Oshtemo, Texas Township, Schoolcraft, and the Gull Lake area. Meaning that keeping the district numbers the same would require reaching into those historically and majority white areas to grab voters in order to attempt to fill the districts inside the city of Kalamazoo and keep them population equal, which again is the first requirement. If we reduce the number of districts, then the effective voice, the top number in the fraction for people of color would effectively increase the percentage representation, which was my belief going into it, and why we voted on why I voted for 9 at the very beginning of the process as a starting point. Now, I drew maps that had 9, that had 7, that had 11, that had 13. I drew a 21 district map. It was a nightmare. And 21, by the way, is the largest number that we are legally allowed to draw based on the population of Kalamazoo County. It's between 5 and 21. I stuck with odd numbers because I don't like deadlocked board. And that was why I chose to stick with odd numbers. Maybe that was a mistake. I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong, but from what I saw as I was working through this, and I spent many, many, many hours sitting at this computer in this office, drawing maps and trying to find the best arrangement with all of those different numbers. What I found is that the 9 district map was the best as far as the racial equity scores, as far as the relative ability of people of color to represent themselves. I only received 2 maps drawn by the community as an example of what they wanted. One of those maps was a 7 district map, which I said, I think that's a little too much. I think that that's going a little too small. And it was not equitable either. And the other was from Chris Burns, submitted a map, and we talked about it. And I incorporated a lot of the ideas that he drew in his map into the ones that I submitted. I didn't see any other map submissions by anyone. I would have liked to. I saw a lot of people talk about the number of commissioners that they wanted, but that we can disagree on a number. This process has been difficult. It has been arcane. It has been confusing because of the deadlines and because of the various rules that are not spelled out clearly. But we did our best. I'm going to talk to council, and I'm going to talk to the members of the AC at our next meeting and try to determine if we can pull those maps back, if we can work with the community on them, if that's something that the majority of the AC wants to do. And we will go from there. Thank you all for this opportunity to speak with you. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Treasurer Whitener, for lifting your voice, also for listening to us as well. Before I pass this back over to Elder King, I just want to say we've had almost 100 people on this Zoom. You have heard from BIPOC community members, white allies, and we've been saying the same thing, that we know that in collaboration with you all, the AC, in collaboration, we can get a better map, a map that is centered in racial equity, and one that will cross that finish line that you are talking about. And so when you go back, Treasurer, when you go back and talk to the AC members, please share that this can be done. We have that extension. We have that extension. So yes, we should do that. Let's do that. When we're talking about anti-racism, it's about being bold. It's about moving forward. Sometimes it may not be comfortable, but that's what Kalamazoo County is about. We need to do this. We can do this. The other thing that I wanted to say before I hand this over is that it's just not about racial equity scores. That's a piece of it, but voices have lifted up again. It's about representation. Also, there are folks that have been drawing maps. We've been waiting. We're so excited. We've been waiting for this meeting with you all so that we can discuss and think about other meetings so we can start looking at maps collaboratively. So I want to say this in the chat, you all. Oh, I'm Treasurer.
I'll say it right now, tlwhit@calcounty.com. Send me your maps. I want to see them. I really do. And I wish I'd been more explicit about saying that in the beginning. I want to see them. So send me your maps and we can have that conversation about each of them.
Can you put your email in the chat too, Treasurer? Thank you. So everybody, anybody who would like to just lift their voice in the chat, what do we need to happen next? Go ahead and put that in the chat. And we're gonna go ahead and try our best to lift these. What do we need to do next? What do you need to happen next? We're about to wrap this meeting up. We appreciate everybody coming out and speaking, and it does not stop here. So what do we need next?
Stop.
Commissioner Streb said motion to reconsider. It's going fast here. Collaboration community with the AC for equity, a motion. No more lies, honesty, transparency, committee officials willing to work with community. And if I happen to miss them because they're going fast, just say it in the atmosphere. I agree, let's work together to determine what's best for our community, in capital letters, our community. Transparency from our commission and for them to hear and respect our voice.
Dr. Charlay, can I ask a question? This is
Yes.
Francis.
Yes, Francis.
Can these comments be saved that are in the chat? And then can these be shared with the apportionment committees for them to consider?
Yes, most definitely. I think it should be set so they can be saved already. Yes.
I just wonder, Dr. Charlotte, you know, Mr. Whitner, I think there are places, I know there are places in the community that can help you in your meetings so that when you have more people involved, there's ways to handle that. So when you have conflict, there's a way of dealing with that so that everyone has a voice and you're able to, by certain strategies, is how I come to a resolution. It doesn't matter if there's 10 or 15 people. There's ways of addressing that. So I hope you keep that in mind, because I understand your concern about that.
Thank you so much, Deacon Karen. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm still in the chats. Yes, let's do something uncommon. Use the extension. I'm scrolling down here. Transparency from our commission and for them to hear and respect our voice. Cultural and racial humility from white men. Have the courage to put on the brakes, step back and reconsider. Responding to comments and taking time to discuss that before voting. Are there any others? And did I miss any? Real honesty, effective listening, normalized inclusion, respectful collaboration, having the whole committee do a forum and participate. A strong leader admits when they don't know and or are wrong. Let's get to work. Thank you. Any others in the chat? And if I missed you all's, if it's going too fast, please lift it up. I'm not trying to miss anybody's voice. Do what's best for the community they serve. Listen to all the voices during all, oh, it's moving, sorry. Okay, listen to, sorry, let me scroll back up. Listen to all voices during all meetings moving forward. Thank you, Thomas. You could be a leader in this work. There's a question, can this video be sent to the rest of the AC? Yes, it most definitely will be. Thanks for asking that, Kelly. Yes, it will be. Are there any other folks, community members putting together their map suggestions and send on the AC on deadline so there's time to consider options? Define what equity will look like. Is Kalamazoo district balancing a good solution? City district balancing a good solution? Yes, the recording will be posted, Deacon Pat. We appreciate your time to this forum. Wish all the committee cared enough to attend and to understand how important community voices are in regards to redistricting. Any other voices that want to put their words in the chat and I will read them. And if I missed any, please speak them into the atmosphere. And last call for any other words. Treasurer said, thank you. Thank you, Treasurer. He said, thank you all, I'm sorry. Kalamazoo could be an example of the whole state on creating equity. Yes. I see Elle leaning forward. Are you saying something, Elle?
I just wanted to, if I could,
yes.
just say how much I appreciate the treasurer for at least taking us up on the invitation and actually respecting us enough to stay for the duration of the forum to share with us. This is hard work and it is not for the faint of heart. And the reality is that we are living in a world that is structurally racist by design. And we have to continue to talk to people and to educate people about the harm that is done, whether it's intentional or not, it's still harm. And so I am just really, it's a courageous person to be able to step out and take whatever consequences that you're going to get within your committee. But also more importantly, to stand in front of kind of the targeting range, knowing what you're walking into is courageous. And for that, I will, give credit where it's due. So thank you so much. And also extend appreciation for all the people that did show up and did take the time to learn about what's happening and how critical it is to lift your voice about what's happening so that all of our voices are heard and that we come up with a map that's equitable and fair and just for everybody. So thank you so very much.
Thank you so very much, Gwendolyn, for lifting that. So true. Thank you. I just have a few more comments. I'm gonna get ready to hand this over. Let's change the narrative for generations to come. Thank you for attending, Treasurer Whitener. Gracias, Thomas, respect to Thomas. Here's the website to draw maps in case anyone would like to share. Thank you, Councilperson Burns. True, thanks.
About the days redistricting tool, I just want to share for everyone. It's a great tool. It's how I started in drawing maps. It's a fantastic place to go to use, and it's free, which is probably the best part about it, to be honest. And the one thing is it's meant for federal level redistricting. So you have to fiddle with it a little bit to get it to let you draw the maps how they need to be drawn for Kalamazoo County and to focus on Kalamazoo County. Otherwise you got the whole state. It's weird. But it's a great tool. The numbers that they use are a little bit different from what we've got from the state tool. But it's close enough that it will get you very, very close to maps that are there. If we want to talk about this afterward, I would be willing to walk people through getting it set up so you can go and draw your own maps, because it does take a little bit of fiddling with, and I can do that at another time. We can set up a meeting, and anybody who wants to come and see how to set that up, I'd be happy to do, because it can be fiddly, but it's fun. It's a puzzle, and everybody likes puzzles.
Thank you, Treasurer. Thank you, Treasurer. The last two comments that I see, thank you all, great process. It feels like the way this whole process might have begun. And so I'm going to pass this over to Elder King. I just want to leave this statement. This collaboration is powerful and it is still possible. I'm just going to leave that in the atmosphere. Elder King, I'm giving it over to you to take us out in prayer. And I know, thank you for all the clergy. I'm sorry, Elder King. I saw a lot of clergy joined. A special thank you to all the clergy and all community members as well, all elected officials, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Valuable folks, the press, reporters, just thank you. We appreciate you all.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Davis. Again, thank you, Treasurer Widener, for your courage in coming out and participating in this forum. One of the things Isaac often says is that we will stay at the table for these discussions, whether we agree or disagree. We're determined to stay at the table. Two other comments. Isaac does a listening campaign. One of the things we learned in our listening campaign is that we learned not to tell the neighborhoods what they needed, but we learned to go ask the neighborhoods what they needed so they could tell us, as opposed to we tell them what they needed. So it would behoove us all to, before we do anything, to go to the places that we're going to do them with or about and get their input before we do it. And then when we do it, it comes from a different vantage point. So we are asking the Apportionment Commission to be examples that we can collaboratively be, that you be leaders in equitable map drawing. And we're requesting that. And as a matter of fact, we are as a community demanding that be the case. And I think as a voice of the community, we have that responsibility to do that. So thank you, everyone, So let us pray. God, we thank you for this community. We thank you for this Kalamazoo community. We thank you for this forum and all those who have the strength to stand to try to make our community a better place. And so we thank you for Treasure sticking with us. We thank you for all of those others who participated. We thank you for the leadership of this community. We ask you to let your grace rest on Kalamazoo. Let your mercy rest on Kalamazoo. Let this be a community that is able to come together. Let us be the example that you are asking us to be for other communities, that they will come to this community and say, please show us how. Show us how to get this work done. Show us what it takes. We have come tonight to put feet to our faith and to hold each other accountable to the work that you have asked us to do. And so you told us to love mercy, to do justice, and walk humbly before our God. And so we thank you for the opportunity that you have given us to do that. Now bless us as we each go forth to us in our homes and to our separate places. Just be with us and bless us. Let your love go from person to person. And we thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Dr. Davis, it's back to you. Any last words?
No, a special thank you to everybody in collaboration and in community and in collaboration. I'm going to say that again, we can do anything. And we truly believe that. And so good night, love to you all, and we'll look forward to being in touch very soon. And Treasurer, again, thank you very much. And we look forward to being in touch with you very soon and the AC Commission. Thank you.